Why do doctors have bad handwriting? Is this what people are Googling? Wait, let me see if this is true. Give me a second. 1 second. This is not that bad, is it? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Roda and I'm a doctor working in the UK. And today's video is going to be slightly fun. It's going to be a little bit different, less serious. I'm going to be answering some of the most commonly Googled questions that people have when it comes to their health, their body, and also about doctors. Thought it'd be a little bit more of a fun way of giving some insight into medicine and a little bit of education around health and make it not so boring, basically. So, let's get into it. Why do doctors slap babies? What? I am surprised at what people are Googling, and I have done 6 months of pediatrics, so I've worked on a children's ward and I have never slapped a baby, nor have I seen them being slapped, so this is news to me. I'm really curious now, so I'm gonna have to find this out when I finish filming, because I am like, why do doctors tap your chest? Ooh, this is a good one. This tapping is actually called percussion, and it's actually a really important and very useful part when it comes to examining a patient's chest. So when we percuss, we're listening out for different sounds, and different sounds give us a clue in terms of what's going on inside the lungs. And it's all about the amount of air that's actually in the lungs. So the less air there's in the lungs, the more dull the sound is going to be. So if there's any sort of fluid in the lungs, if there's any growth or any masses in the lungs, that's going to create a dull sound. And when there's too much air, so there's certain conditions such as a pneumothorax, which is where the lung has collapsed and it's introduced a lot of air into the kind of lung cavity, that will create a very hyper-resonant sound, or almost like a high-pitched sound. So it's really important part of the examination. Why do doctors flick the syringe? These are really good questions, by the way. I think it's for two reasons. One is when you've got any sort of medicine or a fluid inside the syringe, you want to make sure you've got the most accurate volume in there. So an example is if I'm giving someone morphine, which is a very strong painkiller, you want to make sure that you're giving the right amount. Things like air bubbles will make the measurement less accurate. So you want to get rid of those by flicking it, but also by squeezing a little bit so that the air bubbles go away. And then there's another reason we do that as well, and that is to try and avoid actually introducing an air bubble into the bloodstream, because that can lead to a very rare but very dangerous complication called an air embolism. And this is basically where there is a bubble inside the blood vessel, and that can lead to it blocking the blood flow. So if you can imagine that happening in the brain, so a blood vessel in the brain, that can actually lead to a stroke. Or if it's a blood vessel in the heart, that can lead to a heart attack. It's very rare, and I've never heard of it actually happening. It's one of those things what we always do, like flick the syringe, squeeze a little bit of the fluid out of it. Why do doctors have bad handwriting? This is such a common stereotype, and I wish I could say it was false, but it's absolutely true. I had all right-ish handwriting when I was in college, and then it steadily started declining when I went through university, and then it took a massive nosedive in terms of quality when I started working. And I've got a few theories as to why that might be. This is completely scientific. Not really. I think it's down to having to write loads. Nobody tells you this, but working as a doctor, a lot of the job is writing things. I'm writing drug prescriptions, I'm writing referral letters, I'm writing ward round notes, I'm writing entries into the patient notes, I'm signing things. There's so much written stuff that needs to be done, and there's almost always a pressure of time involved. So you have to write quick, you're always fighting against time. So I think that's probably one of the reasons my handwriting's gone absolutely downhill. It's terrible. It's terrible. Why do doctors ask for stool samples? People are asking the real questions here. If you're squeamish, you might want to skip this part. So poo, or if we're being a bit more classy, stools, is a very good way of giving us a lot of ideas about what's happening with someone's health, and specifically their digestive system. The nature of the stools is actually really important. So examples are if the stools are very greasy and they're very difficult to flush, that could be an indication that there is something going on with something called the pancreas, which is a gland that just sits behind the stomach. and one of its jobs is to produce proteins that break down fat in our food. If the pancreas is not working properly, that means the fat in our food is not going to get broken down, so it just ends up being mixed with the stool, so they become very greasy. Colour can give us a lot of clues as to what's going on. For example, a very black stool can mean, is there some sort of bleeding going on in the stomach? Or if it's more fresh red blood, is there any sort of bleeding coming from a little bit more lower down in the digestive system? And the consistency is also something that's really important. And fun fact, there is actually a proper medical tool that we use called the Bristol stool chart that actually classifies stools into 7 different types. If you're interested, you can Google that and have a look at all the different types when you've got a bit of spare time. When we want a more detailed look, we do send it off. So looking for sort of infections like bacteria, viruses, parasites, and also a certain substance that if it's high can indicate things like inflammatory bowel disease. So poo is really important basically. Why do doctors bang your knee? The first thought I had there was this person going around with a hammer and literally like assaulting someone, hitting them in the knees. I know what they mean. And here they're talking about reflexes. As part of a neurological examination, so testing the nerves, we do tap in various parts of the body to produce something called a reflex. A reflex is basically an automatic action that our body does in response to something. An example is if you touch something really hot, you instantly kind of move it away. Or if something's coming towards you, you blink and you don't really think about this, and this is what's called a reflex. There are actually lots of reflexes that we have, and a lot of them are protective. So example is the knee reflex, tapping onto the knee itself, kind of tapping onto the tendon, and that will produce a response whereby we kick our legs out. You can have different responses depending on what's going on with the nerve. So if it's absent or reduced, again, that could mean there's a problem with the nerves. Doctors have lots and lots of places where we can tap to test these reflexes. So we've got one here, got one on our elbow, we've got one in the knee, we've got one in the ankle, the sole of the foot. And all of those are designed to test whether or not our nervous systems are working properly. Why do doctors say clear?
He's arrested! Charging! Clear!
So in a hospital, when a cardiac arrest occurs, so that is when someone's heart stops, there is what's called a cardiac arrest team that will arrive and try and get the patient's heart restarted again. So that is through 2 means, by obviously doing CPR, so that's like pumping on the chest itself, and also through defibrillation if it's indicated, and that is where we deliver electrical shocks to the heart to try and kickstart it. In the movies, they always have like these giant hand pads that they like put on the patient's chest, and then the whole patient just like moves up. In real life, I've never seen that being used, and instead we use stickers that we put on the patient's chest that are connected through wires to a defibrillator or the machine that actually delivers the electricity. So if you can imagine, like, there's so many people around that patient's bed. My experience when it comes to cardiac arrest, it's very, very chaotic. There's a lot of things going on all at once. When it's time to shock the patient, so to deliver the electricity, it's really important for that person, because it's literally just pressing a button. It's really important for that person to tell everyone that's around that patient and touching the patient to move away, because otherwise they will get an electrical shock as well, and it's definitely not what we want. So that's why we say clear. Why do doctors look at your hands? Oh, the hands tell us so much about someone's health. It's amazing. There's like a whole host of different diseases and conditions that cause signs to be picked up on hands. Fun fact, there was actually a doctor, I remember there was a doctor who shook someone's hand while he was in a cafe or something and diagnosed this like ultra rare disease just by shaking his hands. So much information that we can get from the hands. So the colours. Someone had blue fingertips. Could that mean Raynaud's disease, which is a condition where the little blood vessels in the fingers seize up in response to the cold weather and then they change colour? Or the temperature. So if they're very hot, that could mean there is a problem with the thyroid gland, which is a gland that produces hormones to regulate our body's rate in which it works. The shape of the nails, so if you've got spoon-shaped nails, that could mean you've got iron deficiency anemia. Or if there's certain little flecks of blood in the nails, that could mean an inflammation of the heart. Any sort of rashes, so if there's lots of spots on a baby's hand, for example, and they have those in their mouth and their feet, that's called hand, foot and mouth disease, which is a really, really common and often harmless viral disease. So hands give us a lot of ideas about how healthy someone is. Why do doctors check your eyes? That's a very sensible question, very sensible. Again, lots and lots of reasons for this, and it's actually, I'd say, 3 types of eye examinations that are all looking at different parts of the eye. The outer eye itself, so like the white part of the eye, can become inflamed if you've got red eye, for example. And then there's also checking the nerves of the eye. So when someone tells you to kind of look from side to side, that's testing the 6 different muscles in the eye. And so shining a light into your eyes, testing the nerves of your eye, and also testing the brain. And then there's a more detailed eye examination, which you might have had at the opticians, and that is fundoscopy. So that's using a special piece of equipment where we look at the retina. So that's the innermost layer of the eye. So if you can imagine, this is the eye. So this is the front of the eye. The retina will be kind of the inside, so where my palm is. And that's the most important part of the eye. That actually is a part that enables us to be able to see. This is the part that actually receives light and converts it into a signal that the brain can interpret. So there's lots and lots of different things that can affect the retina. So if someone has uncontrolled diabetes, for example, that can show up as like bleeding in the back of the eye. There's so many things that the health of the eye can tell us. Anyway guys, that was everything. Hopefully you found that useful, and it's a slightly different video that was actually really fun to film. If you have any ideas of any sorts of videos that you want me to film, please let me know. As always, if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.